Well, I'm delighted to be joined by the 2010 Betfred World Snooker Champion. It's Neil Robertson. Neil, thanks for joining us. Now, this is the most important question we're asking everyone at the moment. I hope you and your family are safe and well.
Yes, we are. Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a few of us in the house, and we're all keeping each other busy in this time. It's obviously very strange for everyone, but yeah, it seems as though the country's sort of pulled round, pretty quickly and abiding by all the guidelines necessary. And yeah, hopefully over the next sort of month or so, we can start to sort of like see a lot of positive results.
And the family in Australia are okay?
Yeah, everyone back home is all well and everything like that. I think Australia were quite lucky in a way where they kind of had a couple of weeks head start on the rest of the world with everything going on, and very easy to kind of close the borders down sort of coming into Australia. So I think Australia's down to something like 70 deaths, which is terrible, but compared to where everyone else is in the world, it seems to have got a hold of it pretty early on.
It'd be far worse in this country, Neil, if it wasn't for our fantastic NHS.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a couple of friends who are doctors and stuff like that, and working in the hospitals and telling me, how hard it is, and just absolute admiration, towards all the people involved with the NHS.
It puts playing in perspective, and what I do for a living, it puts it all into playing snooker. What I do for a living puts it all into perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, absolutely. I think it's not ideal by any means, but I think that when you're a professional sportsman or anyone who's had a very successful career, I think it's very important to sort of like realize just how fortunate you are, and there are a lot of families out there really struggling, and I think it's important for all of us to kind of do our bit to support everyone in our community.
Announcement this week, Neil, that the World Snooker Championship, fingers crossed, if the government advice will allow, will be on at the end of July. Now, there's three scenarios, obviously. There's one with a full crowd, one with a part crowd, and then behind closed doors. First of all, your reaction to the World Championships, fingers crossed, being on at the end of July.
Yeah, I think it's a realistic date to set. It's not like we're trying to get it in May or June or something like that. I think towards the end of July, I think is it's certainly feasible. And it just all depends on the government guidelines, how they change. Getting the qualifiers done, that's probably the toughest task, I think, for World Snooker is to get those qualifiers done, because they take a couple of weeks in themselves. And so I'm sure World Snooker are working 24/7 on this to get it done. And it'd be interesting. Obviously the Crucible is the best place to play, in front of a big crowd, and the whole of Sheffield is buzzing, and so out of those three scenarios, it'll be interesting to see which one we have to go with.
How would you feel if it was behind closed doors?
I mean, if it was behind closed doors, then it would obviously it would take away a lot from. I mean, for example, when I won it, I had my mum there and other family members and your friends there, and you're all partying afterwards. It would be a different feeling. There's no doubt about that. But I think these are really tough times we live in, and I look at it from a perspective where we're trying to provide live content, live entertainment for people that are watching at home. Maybe a lot of people have been doing it really tough, and I know that sport can really inspire people all around the world, and maybe that can just give people a little bit of a boost, that they need.
We've got to give credit to World Snooker, BBC, Eurosport, Sheffield Council, and the Crucible itself for, being so forward thinking and hopefully getting it on at the end of July. Yeah,
absolutely. It'll be really interesting as well from a playing perspective to play in the summer, because usually we play. Usually you have this kind of like the summer off in a way, maybe a couple of smaller events that are optional to play in. But to play the World Championships in the summer will be really interesting. I think, it's the playing conditions could vary slightly. Not really too sure, because usually we play the Asian side of the tour sort of during the hotter months. So we don't usually play in the UK during the summer. So yeah, it would be pretty interesting.
It must have cheered you up and the rest of the players, because obviously you lot live by the calendar, don't you? Now, at least you've got something to look forward to.
Yeah, that's it. I think it's really tough if you don't have anything to kind of work towards. You know, if you don't have any dates set in stone. I think yeah, I know a couple other guys involved in sport and other sports, and you know, it's tough training every day when you don't know what you're going to be training for. You know, it's tough to keep that kind of motivation up. But then on the other side of the coin, you got to look at it that you're very fortunate to actually be able to do that, because a lot of people have obviously lost their jobs in the country and have to rely on the government heavily to support them. So I think that, you know, being in a position we're in, we have to sort of, you know, treat it with the respect it deserves, and try and do our bit for the communities, for people watching at home, to try and set a really good example on social media whenever possible as well.
Let's look back now while we've got you. What is it about the Crucible? It's just, as soon as you walk in, look, I'm a snooker fan and I'm lucky enough to work on it. Obviously, I don't play like you, but just as soon as you walk into the venue, you just feel like you're in somewhere special.
Yeah, because, you know, it's so busy. So there's all, you know, all the media are there. Not at you know, there's a lot of tournaments throughout the season which are maybe a bit smaller on the calendar, where you don't have all the media, you don't have all like even just the people around the venue. You know, you get a lot of big crowds at other tournaments, but you don't get the real busyness and excitement that you get around the Crucible. And you know, you see all the Betfred banners up there everywhere, all around the city, and the promotion for the event is amazing. Even just people in cafes and restaurants, and you know, everything's buzzing about the place. And yeah, once you get in there to play, it's awesome. You know, it's got such history attached to it. You only have to look at the classic matches that they've been playing this week and see, you know, just how the tournament's evolved, how the playing standard has evolved, just everything as a whole. And it's very special to be a part of that journey.
And whatever happens in your career, Neil, you can say you were world champion.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's everyone's dream, is to be, you know, world champion, world number one. I was fortunate enough to achieve both of those things within the space of a few months, and you know, it's coming up to my 10th year now since I had won it. So it'd be nice to try and win another one, and join another sort of very special group of players who have won it only twice.
Can you put into words what it was like beating Graham Dott in that final and lifting the famous trophy?
Yeah, it was everything you always dream, because you know, you never really think it's going to happen until you actually get your hands on the trophy. And you know, when you're potting the winning balls, you know, my journey was obviously a lot harder in a way, where I fell off the tour a few times, coming from Australia as well. So you know, there's not too many players that have actually won it from overseas. In fact, I think it was just Cliff Thorburn. I was the first player to win it since Cliff Thorburn did. And the only player to win it since. And you know, for the overseas players, it is an awful lot harder, which makes the achievement even more special.
Because I'm right in thinking, before winning the world title, you nearly jacked the game in, didn't you? And nearly went back to Australia. Is that right?
Yeah, I did. I think there was you know, a few times where I fell off the tour. I think when I was like 16, 18, 20, I fell off the tour all of those years. Kept going back to Australia, and it's like, is it worth it to keep moving to the other side of the world? And you know, I didn't particularly enjoy living in England at the time. You know, I was really homesick as well, and it's really hard to describe and compare to other people, because you know, some of the players don't enjoy going to some of the other countries around the world where they get homesick and they're only away for a couple of weeks. You know, I do it every year where I'm away for 10, 11 months, and you know, making that sacrifice to knowing that you're only going to see your closest friends and your family just once a year, is a massive step to make. And you know, I'm not too sure how many players would actually do that.
You've gone close a couple of times as well. Semi-finalist in 2009. I mean, you were 14-7 down to Sean Murphy, and you've got it back to your 14-all, but Sean just edged you out in the end in 2009.
Yeah, it was, I was 14-7 down, got back to 14 each. And then I remember at 14-13 down, I started playing a lot of exhibition shots on the colours, like, because I knew that he needed like 10 snookers or something ridiculous. And he actually told me afterwards, like, you know, sometime after that's actually what kind of spurred him on to actually, you know, just really dig in. Because at the Crucible, you know, when you're playing exhibition shots on the colours, you don't necessarily mean it as a way to disrespect your opponent. You're just trying to entertain the crowd. So since that moment, I actually stopped kind of doing that, because I didn't really want to give my opponents more encouragement, because Sean came out after the interval at 14-all and went, went something like 80, 100, 90. So I was just, it wasn't much I could do. But I think you see the way that Judd played last year, the way he entertained the crowd with a lot of exhibition shots. I think that, for myself, I want to start playing those shots again, because it seems as though it's kind of accepted to do that in the game again, where I was doing it, I was like this young Aussie who's like a show off. And then all of a sudden you got Judd doing it. So now it's like, okay, you got an English guy doing it. So surely I can have a bit of fun too.
Do you think that experience in 2009, getting so close, helped the next year, though, when you actually won it in 2010?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because that was my first time playing on the one table setup in the semi-final. And, it's a big difference from the two table setup. And so Sean had obviously been there before when he won it in 2005. That gave me a great deal of experience. And I remember playing my semi-final against Ali Carter. I played absolutely amazing. I think I had 4 centuries to lead 10-6, and then closed out the match pretty comfortably. And when you're playing really well on the one table setup, there's really not many better places to play.
And in 2014, you're involved in a mammoth semi-final against Mark Selby.
Yeah, it was 17-15. That was the season where I beat Judd in the quarterfinals, and I made the 100th century of the season first player to make the 100 centuries, and which was just an amazing achievement. There's a lot of build up, with the media and everything. Will I make the 100 centuries at the Crucible or not at all? I remember rattling a black on my 99th century, and the crowd was just like, they're so disappointed, And then against Judd, I was 6-2 down. It wasn't looking good that I was even going to make a century in the match. And but I somehow, came back into the match, made the 100th century. And previous or since then, I've never heard a louder roar at the Crucible than, when I made my 100th century. And it was an amazing feeling. And going into the semi-finals, I was, a little bit sort of fatigued in that. My dad just came over, and so big emotional experience, not seeing my dad for nearly a year. He was over there for it. I remember starting off in the match quite slowly, but then I sort of really started to play well. And actually just showed the classic Crucible matches. They're showing them over the next sort of 17 days. And they showed mine and Mark's game a couple of days ago. And just watching it back, it was like just an amazing match. And we were actually texting each other during it. We were both watching it, just saying, it was just like one of those real matches where there was like, just an occasion where you could really say that it's a shame that there was actually a loser in that match. Neither player really deserved to lose it. And Mark in the end won 17-15, and he obviously went on to win it, beat Ronnie in the final, and won it 3 times over the next 4 years. What
would it mean to win it again then, Neil?
Well, it's really strange because I've won everything else in the game, and I've won them multiple times. Last 2 seasons I've won 6 major tournaments. So kind of winning another world title is like the last thing on the list to kind of really sort of, I think, maybe really elevate myself, maybe my status in the game even further than what it is. So I think being an overseas player is probably up there already. No one else has done what I've done in the game coming from overseas. And but winning a second world title would be amazing. I think last year, I came really close to playing in the final with Judd, which would have been amazing. And then this year again, we were the two form players going in. Judd obviously having an absolutely incredible season, but I wasn't too far behind either. So, and the fact we're in opposite draws would be pretty interesting. A lot of people talking about that too.
Yeah, you've been playing great for the last couple of years. I mean, last year at the Crucible, you hit the scrapper John Higgins, didn't you, in the quarterfinal? Because you were playing great up until that point, weren't you?
Yeah, I was playing really well. And then, just ran into John, and John was just in that absolute sort of never die kind of attitude that he displays so often. And I just couldn't shake him away. And then in the end, he just picked me to the finish line. Then he got to the final, and, Judd played amazing stuff. But I probably think that maybe that quarterfinal just probably took a bit too much out of him, because he struggled a lot in the semi-finals, and I think barring Dave's inexperience probably would have won that match. But just an amazing achievement by John to get to that final. But there's a couple other matches, a couple other quarterfinals I've lost since winning it, which were probably tournament defining for myself as well. And it's just about having that extra little something, I think, that I think over the last couple of years that I've added to my game. So I'm sure if I get that chance again, then I'll be able to go all the way.
And what will it feel, fingers crossed, walking out into the arena come July then?
Don't know really. I think if a full crowd will be allowed, then I think it'll probably be the loudest roar you will ever hear, because it'll be the first time where, you know, people probably haven't been able to go out and gather in large crowds or cheer something on live, you know, because there's no sport to watch on TV live. There's no nothing. So you're kind of watching replays and stuff like that, which is great for your nostalgia and, you know, and to look back on the memories. But people want to see live action. I want to see live sport. And, you know, snooker's a brilliant sport, whether you're watching an arena or if you're watching your TV at home.
Just as a final question, if you don't mind me asking, Neil, you've spoken a lot about mental health issues recently with your partner. It's a tough time for everyone. What advice would you give to people to, you know, go and talk and seek help? Because you've obviously helped your partner, you know, a lot over the last few years.
Yeah, I think, yeah, there's a lot of help now, especially online. And I know that there's a lot of, you know, group calls you can do with like Zoom and stuff like that. There's plenty of people on social media willing to help. Probably the best thing I could say personally to do is to make sure that, you know, in these times that you're structuring your day really well. Just plan everything out and have a really good structure in place with what you're actually doing, because you know, I think with Miller, it's really important that she goes out, does her runs, and, you know, all these sorts of things. You got to really take advantage of that time that you can go outside and go for a run. You've really got to do it. I think you know, exercise is probably the most important thing to do right now. Get out, get some fresh air. You know, don't all flock to the beach though in huge crowds. Go out, do your run, do a bit of cycling. You know, it's the most important thing right now. And just follow the guidelines as well as you can, and eat healthy. Whatever you do not binge on junk food and just sit and watch TV all day. You know, try and keep as active as possible.
And how is your partner now?
Yeah, completely different to how she was a few years ago. Just absolutely amazing. You know, I think since we kind of come out and talk about it, we've seen a lot of other, you know, top athletes talk about it as well. You know, especially like, you know, people like Tyson Fury doing the documentary, which has been absolutely wonderful for mental health and helping people understand what it actually is. There's not a bad sort of stigma attached to it anymore. It's actually something where people come out and friends and family can all gather around and support each other, you know, through some tough times, because, you know, I think it's tough for everyone at the moment. Yeah, and it's great to see a large network of people supporting each other.
Do you think the message is quite clear? Don't suffer in silence.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to talk about it. You know, don't be afraid to talk about it. I think I did an interview the other day that I retweeted on Twitter, and all of a sudden it was like flooded with messages saying, "Thanks so much for doing this. You wouldn't know it, but it means an awful lot to people when people like you can actually talk about it publicly." And so, you know, from my point of view, that's absolutely job done. And I'm always open to talk and help people on social media as well.
No, I think that's, you know, really, really good, Neil. And thanks for talking about it with us. And look, thanks for your time. And please, your family stay safe and well. And hopefully, I'll see you at that wonderful Crucible in July.
Yes, Mark. Yeah, hopefully, mate. Hopefully.
Thanks so much for your time. And you take care, Neil.
Cheers, mate. Thanks, bud.